Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, big news. Day 2 of the Democratic National Convention will start shortly. Tonight, former President Bill Clinton, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Sandy, will speak. That ought to be worth watching. We'll have live coverage of all of it throughout the night right here on Fox News. But it turns out there are only two kinds of people in the world: those who enjoy mandatory corporate diversity seminars and those who don't. If you find yourself in the former category, you must have loved last night's Democratic convention. The preachy self-righteousness, the condescension, the shameless lying, the strange mixture of guilt and aggression. It probably all felt refreshingly familiar to you. For everyone else, though, it was a massive turnoff. The whole thing seemed like the weirdest infomercial ever made. At one point, they dragged out grouchy old John Kasich, a man with the charm of a high school science teacher, to try to sell you things. No thanks. Who would buy that? If the DNC was in direct marketing, they would be bankrupt by now. But the weirdest moment by far of the night was Andrew Cuomo's speech. Cuomo is the brother of CNN's weightlifting correspondent and is also the sitting governor of New York, which is the second biggest Democratic state. His father famously gave the DNC keynote back in 1984. So there was never any question that Andrew Cuomo was going to speak at this year's convention. What we did not expect in a million years was Andrew Cuomo to talk about the coronavirus. You'd think that would be the last thing, the very last thing Cuomo would want to talk about, that and the fact that his top aide is now doing 6 years in prison for bribery. But coronavirus especially. Whatever you think of Andrew Cuomo, and he's a good talker, you can't say he's done a good job with the pandemic. Citizens of New York State have been 4 times as likely to die as other Americans from the coronavirus. And there's a reason for that. Andrew Cuomo forced corona-infected patients into nursing homes. Many thousands perished as a result of that decision. It is possible that no leader on earth mishandled the coronavirus outbreak as profoundly as Andrew Cuomo did. A man with integrity would have resigned immediately. Cuomo refused to do that. Now he brags about it, literally. Last night, Cuomo told the audience what a great job he did managing the coronavirus. Nobody laughed at him. They applauded, like they agreed. The whole thing was like watching Jeffrey Epstein boast about his internship program. You could barely believe it was happening, but it was. Here's part of it.
New Yorkers were ground zero for the COVID virus and have gone from one of the highest infection rates on the globe to one of the lowest. We climbed the impossible mountain, and right now we are on the other side. Our nation is in crisis. And in many ways, COVID is just a metaphor. A virus attacks when the body is weak and when it cannot defend itself. The European virus infected the Northeast while the White House was still fixated on China. As they proved their way failed, we proved that our way succeeded. And for all the pain and all the tears, our way worked. And it was beautiful.
The European virus? Huh? Oh, right. The deadly pathogen that escaped from a lab in Luxembourg last winter. Those damn Europeans, always infecting us with their diseases. If only they would stop eating bats. What world is this? It's a world of such pure dishonesty that all reference points have disappeared from sight. There are no facts left, only assertions. Andrew Cuomo says the way he handled the coronavirus was, quote, beautiful. And so it was. Cuomo declared it. It's now reality. This is a very specific style of political rhetoric. It's a departure from what we had before. Politicians used to try to convince you of things. The assumption was you were in charge. You were the voter, which is to say you were the boss. If they wanted the job, they had to win you over. It turned out to be a cumbersome process, so they've abandoned it now. Now they just browbeat you into accepting their program. If you don't like their program, it's your fault. You're the bad guy. You're immoral. Michelle Obama could teach a master's class in this mode of communication. Last night, she delivered a taped address from her $11 million estate on Martha's Vineyard. Michelle Obama, it's fair to say, has done pretty well for herself. But what she wanted you to know last night was that she is still a victim, she and everyone who looks like her. So shut up and accept her dominion over you. Watch.
And here at home, as George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and a never-ending list of innocent people of color continue to be murdered, stating the simple fact that a Black Life Matters is still met with derision from the nation's highest office.
Now, we don't want to be too harsh about this. We're not lawyers, but we understand the constitutional limits of the First Amendment in this country is now defined. No shouting fire in a crowded theater, no criticizing Michelle Obama. We know that. So we're going to say this as gently as possible, meaning absolutely no disrespect and, of course, being certain to pronounce everyone's name correctly. But what you just heard was a total and complete crock. A never-ending list of innocent people of color continued to be murdered? That's what Michelle Obama told us. Well, no. So far this year, there have been a total of 8 unarmed black men killed by police in this country. Not a never-ending list, 8. Last year, there was a total of 14. So what Michelle Obama just told you is a total lie, a calculated lie, a lie designed to make America more fearful, more angry, more divided, and thereby help her candidate win. That's what Michelle Obama just did. But pretty much no one pointed it out last night. They were too afraid to. Because as Michelle Obama made very clear, if you disagree with what she says, you are a bigot.
Donald Trump is the wrong president for our country. He has had more than enough time to prove that he can do the job, but he is clearly in over his head. Now, I understand that my message won't be heard by some people. We live in a nation that is deeply divided, and I am a black woman speaking at the Democratic convention. But enough of you know me by now. You know that I tell you exactly what I'm feeling. You know I hate politics, but you also know that I care about this nation.
I understand that my message won't be heard by some people, Michelle Obama declared. Why won't they hear her message? Well, because they're bad people. That's why. Half the country is evil. They hate me for my race, says the woman whose husband was elected by that very same country twice in a row, hence allowing her to buy an $11 million spread on Martha's Vineyard from which she lectures the plebes. And by the way, if Michelle Obama, quote, hates politics so much, why is she giving a political speech at a political convention? Isn't there anything else to do on Martha's Vineyard in the summer? You'd think someone on television might have asked that. It's a pretty obvious question. But no, Michelle Obama was talking, so they were too thrilled to think clearly.
Michelle Obama was riveting, one of the best speeches I've heard her give, and I've heard her give many speeches.
It's not only that she was emotional and a mother and seemed to be a truth teller.
She is clearly one of the most talented political minds of our time right now.
She's also this kind of pop culture figure who also kind of comes across as your favorite next door neighbor.
She doesn't come across as a politician. She comes across as a mother and patriot.
She wasn't just putting the president down. She was trying to pick the country up.
It was all tied together in a beautiful bow by Michelle Obama.
She delivered epic shade.
As Nicole just said, it was epic shade, but it was elegant shade.
I mean, this extraordinary speech. I mean, she's beautiful.
A mother, a patriot, a truth teller, beautiful. Adjective after adjective piling up like tailings outside of mine. It was sad to see someone like Andrew Yang trapped on one of those all-moron panels, faithfully mouthing the words. Yang is actually a very smart guy and a good guy. His friends must be embarrassed for him. The rest of them, though, really mean it. You probably still think of the left as secular, but not anymore. They are fervent religious fanatics. Michelle Obama is their L. Ron Hubbard. Everything she does is good by definition. She's the most beautiful, the smartest, the wisest. If Michelle Obama played golf, she would shoot an 18 every time. In the words of Van Jones, her speech last night was extraordinary. Even though, as you know if you saw it, it was exactly the opposite of that. The speech was ordinary. It was totally pedestrian, like almost everything Michelle Obama says. But you can't admit that. You've got to pretend that she's Aristotle. That's the law. What was legitimately extraordinary last night was the entertainment the DNC provided. Most of the networks didn't show that. They cut away after Michelle Obama finished speaking. They couldn't wait to start slobbering over her. But the cameras did keep rolling, and the few who stuck around were treated to this. hell was that? And how is it going to improve my life? You may have wondered that if you saw it, but the DNC gave you no hint because improving your life isn't the point. It never is. The point of that performance was the BLM signs in the background. They were there to remind you that you have done something very wrong and have no right to resist. Be quiet and accept what we give you. You have no choice. You're guilty. Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser arrived to underscore that point. Bowser City is falling apart right now, literally. Been there? For centuries, Washington, D.C. was a beautiful place. You may remember it from your 6th grade trip there. Parks and trees and open spaces, low buildings, a city the country was proud of. Now its open spaces are lined with tents, and inside them drug-addicted vagrants live, and they emerge periodically to scare and harass visitors and local residents, including in hotel lobbies. It's out of control. Under the leadership of Muriel Bowser, people who pay taxes in Washington are fleeing the city in huge numbers. But that's okay with the Democratic National Committee because Muriel Bowser is on their team. She may have wrecked our nation's capital, a city she did not build, but she got the politics right, and that's all that matters.
So I created Black Lives Matter Plaza right behind me as a place where we could come together to say enough. Because we can't just paint those words behind me. We can't just say those words. We have to live those words.
Yeah, she's living those words. Meanwhile, your unemployment benefits expire. The restaurant you work at has disappeared forever. At least you can go to sleep in your car knowing that far away in a city run by corrupt bureaucrats, a street now has a fashionable political slogan painted across it. That is the message, not just of Muriel Bowser, but of the Democratic Party. They're going with it. That's what they're running on. And that message was consistent throughout last night. At one point, Bernie Sanders arrived to remind you that the one thing you really care about, way more than your kids going back to school or going broke, is getting rid of cash bail for accused criminals. That's what's important. Watch.
To help reform our broken criminal justice system, Joe will end private prisons and detention centers, cash bail, and the school-to-prison pipeline. And to heal the soul of our nation, Joe Biden will end the hate and division Trump has created.
How out of touch would you have to be? How many years would you have to have spent in the United States Senate to believe that ending cash bail would, quote, heal the soul of our nation? That's not a real position that an actual human being would take or say out loud. But that's fine for Bernie Sanders because it turns out he doesn't take real positions anyway. Here he is on CNN over the weekend. He was asked about how he feels about a Wall Street favorite, Kamala Harris, being effectively the next president under Joe Biden. Here's how he responded.
This Wall Street Journal headline says, as Kamala Harris joins Biden ticket, Wall Street sighs in relief. If Wall Street breathes a sigh of relief with Kamala Harris being named to the ticket, what does Bernie Sanders do?
Well, Bernie Sanders does everything that he can to defeat Donald Trump, who is undermining American democracy. Donald Trump was lied to the American people repeatedly on every issue. So what Bernie Sanders is going to do is do everything that I can to defeat Donald Trump, to elect Joe Biden.
It's just an amazing exchange that lays bare what's really going on. Bernie Sanders, who at the very least you thought was sincere, Bernie Sanders, who spent his entire career attacking Wall Street, is asked a really simple question. How do you feel about a craven, soulless puppet of Wall Street potentially running the country in like 3 months? He can't answer the question. This is the Democratic Party in 2020. They don't believe anything, not one thing, and they're not embarrassed about it. Tonight at the convention, for example, they're featuring a major address by Bill Clinton, and they're doing it on the very same day that a new picture emerged showing Bill Clinton getting a massage from a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's. But pay no attention to that because Amy Klobuchar is here with some stale jokes, so be sure to tip your waitresses. Sorry, your servers.
You know, the president may hate the post office, but he's still going to have to send them a change of address card come January.
Feel your soul being crushed yet? Have you watched long enough? It's like the final scene in Das Boot. The walls are caving inward. You're covered in sweat. You feel like a trapped animal desperate to escape. But there is nowhere to go. The mandatory corporate diversity seminar has just begun. Victor Davis Hanson is a senior fellow at the Hoover Institute and a very smart man. We're always grateful to have him on the show. Professor, thanks for coming on. What is the message that the Democratic Party is trying to sell to the country right now?
Well, I think the common themes that you outlined, Tucker, are one, they say these things that aren't true, whether it's Michelle Obama talking about black lives being indiscriminately, almost daily killed on the street, or Andrew Cuomo with the worst record about the virus and then bragging as if it was the best, because there is no media as we used to know it. NBC, ABC, the network news, CNN, MSNBC, PBS, NPR, they're fused with the progressive movement in general and the Democratic Party in particular. So when he says this, he knows nobody's going to challenge him, so that it only emboldens him. The second theme was all of these people have one thing in common, Tucker. They're never subject to the consequences of their ideology. It's easy for Bernie Sanders to say he's for no bail because he has 3 homes. They're not going to. People aren't going to show up, criminals hijack him when he walks out of his lakeside estate. And Michelle Obama knows that there were over 100 people killed in 1 month alone in her hometown in Chicago. They weren't killed by white people. They weren't killed by the police. There's been over 400. She knows that. She knows, as you said, there were 9 killed last year by the police and 8 African Americans perhaps this year. She knows what the real problem is, but she also knows that she could go to Chicago with Barack. She doesn't like politics, meet with community leaders and say, we have a crisis in Chicago in general and among the African American community. She doesn't like politics. It'd be a wonderful thing to do to stop that, what's really an urban genocide. But, you know, it's very easy to say something from your Washington or Martha Vineyard state, $20 million of estate and mansions, because you're never going to be subject to the ramifications. Black Lives Matter is not going to show up outside of her mansion, and there's not going to be an inner city shooting match right outside Martha's Vineyard. So these all become abstractions that you come on and say you really don't want to do this. And finally, when I'm getting back to the media, when she says we go high when they go low, she's talking right now when her husband's administration has weaponized the IRS, the FBI, the DOJ, the CIA, and is the subject of a massive investigation by a federal attorney. And it would probably end up, if things happen as many predict, as one of the most corrupt administrations that tried to destroy a political campaign, a presidential transition, and a presidency. And she's saying that they go low and she goes high. And again, she can say all of that because of the clips that you played. Those clips you played were not from journalists, Tucker. They were from activists that say they're journalists, but they're really part of the progressive agenda and movement.
It's completely distressing. I don't think I've heard it as nicely summed up as that. Professor, I appreciate your coming on tonight. Thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.